Could this Georgia Bulldog offense be the best Georgia offense we've ever seen? Right? That's what I'm going to talk about in today's video. Might be a hot take, but the more I dig into this team, the more I reach out to sources connected within the program, the more I think this offense in 2024 has the potential to be special, very special, and one of the best, maybe the best offense in program history. I'm going to talk about all that. But first, got to send out a trigger warning to the Mike Bobo haters out there. If you don't like Mike Bobo, you're not going to like this video. But if you want to continue listening and learn something, that'd be great too. Because when I think about the best Georgia offenses of all time, if I can get my words straight, I immediately think of the 22 team, right? Stetson Bennett, Brock Bowers, A.D. Mitchell, Ladd McConkey, all those running backs, Kenny McIntosh, so on and so on. That was phenomenal, right? Arguably the best team ever. I mean, they did go undefeated, probably not as good as the team before in 2021, but that offense, you can make the case, was better. They had 41.1 points per game. Very good. Last year, they took a small step backwards. They had 40.1 points per game. So the last 2 years, they've averaged over 40 points a game. Georgia's best offense from a points per game perspective, right? Not talent, not numbers, not anything, just strictly points per game, was Mike Bobo's offense in 2014. The same offense that had Hudson Mason, one of the worst Georgia quarterbacks to come through the program in a while. And, over the last 20, 25, 30 years. All right, Hudson Mason was not good. And Georgia scored 41.3 points per game. Todd Gurley missed half of that season, right? That was the year with Nick Chubb and Sony Michel were freshmen. But, the numbers speak for themselves. Mike Bobo is going to have this offense humming, close to 40 points per game. But that's not what people have complained about Mike Bobo for. It's not that they're not scoring. They are scoring. And they're explosive, and they run the ball. And, they do make a lot of plays through the air. But it's the one or two kind of, boneheaded calls or decisions within a big, important game that Georgia ends up losing. Everyone immediately goes back to that one particular play or two that Mike Bobo called. In 2014, South Carolina on the goal line, probably should have just given it to Todd Gurley. He probably walks in and scored a touchdown. They maybe win that game. But instead, I think it was a play action, was like a screen. It was a bad play call, especially looking back on it and at the time. But Hudson Mason has to do a better job of not throwing the ball, into the ground like that for, I believe it was intentional grounding. That backs them up. They missed the field goal, yada, 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 right? Against Alabama this past year, Georgia, it wasn't as clean. It wasn't as efficient as we had seen it all year. A couple costly turnovers, one, and a weird spot on the field where you think, man, probably not the best play call there at that time. But Georgia's offense is not going to be a problem this year, all right? But I've heard a lot of people talk about how great they could be and probably will be, and I'm with that. I'm not comparing them to 2019 LSU and 2020 Alabama. Every time there's a great offense out there, people want to compare them to those two. Those are the two best offenses I've seen maybe in my life, especially covering college football. But they were better than those Oklahoma offenses that were so great, and probably the USC offenses. And I mean, let's just take a look, right? From a points per game perspective, Georgia needs to take a significant step forward to get to 48 points per game, which is what 2019 LSU, 2020 Alabama did. They both averaged 48 points per game. If Georgia gets to 48 points a game, they are sleepwalking to a national championship. Sleepwalking, because the defense is going to be really, really good. We saw a glimpse of that at G-Day. They're only going to get better over the next several months. They're going to be ready. They're going to be locked and loaded, ready for the Clemson Tigers. But if they score 48 points a game, that would be something. But let's just go back down memory lane real quick, because I think it's crazy to start comparing offenses to these two after what they did. Joe Burrow, in case you forgot, 5,671 yards passing, 60 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, only completed 76% of his passes. That's the greatest season any quarterback has ever had in college football history. Probably barely outdoing Cam Newton's 2010 season. But Jamar Chase, over 1,700 yards, 20 touchdowns. There's not going to be a Georgia receiver who puts up those numbers. Carson Beck is not going to put up Joe Burrow, Mac Jones numbers, right? It's just not, because that's not what they want to do. I think the schedule is tougher than 2020 Alabama's was and 2019 LSU. And they're a little more balanced. And yeah, Clyde Edwards-Helaire rushed for over 1,400 yards, but he was their only kind of the back. He carried the load. Georgia's got a stable of backs. And here's where I think Georgia could have one of the best offenses in school history. You have the returning quarterback, who you could compare 23 Carson Beck season to 2018 Joe Burrow. 2018 Joe Burrow was very good. In fact, he beat Georgia soundly in Baton Rouge. But Carson Beck was better last year than Joe Burrow was that year. Could Carson Beck take that giant of a step forward? It's hard to say, because he was really good last year. But I don't imagine him throwing for over 5,000 yards or 4,500 yards like Mac Jones did, but they're going to be balanced, and there's a lot of weapons. Georgia's offense is deep. That's what I would say. It's deep everywhere. The offensive line, I think you can't talk about the offense without the offensive line. It could be the best in college football this year. I've talked about you're only replacing one lineman. It is the center, and you're replacing probably the best center in program history, but it's with a guy a lot of people are high on. Returning left tackle, returning left guard, returning right guard, who's been on the team for 4+ years now, and then a right tackle job that is, probably Xavier Truss is to lose, but another guy who's been on the roster, it seems like forever. So you've got an older, experienced, veteran-led offensive line that I think could be the anchor of this offense. If it's not Carson Beck, who, again, returning quarterback means everything. Georgia was so much better on offense. I say so much better. It was better in 2022 than it was 2021 because you had an experienced, returning starter who had that entire offseason knowing he was the guy. Well, Carson Beck's going through that now. So Carson Beck could have a monster Heisman type of season. Will he have the numbers to back it up? I don't know. There's a lot of tough road games. It's going to be tough to put up giant numbers and 40 points at Texas, at Alabama, at Kentucky, at Ole Miss. I mean, it's going to be a rough stretch. I think Georgia's better than those teams, but it's going to be tough, I think, for Carson Beck and these receivers, and really everyone, to put up gigantic numbers because they're sharing the load. I mean, the receiving core is about as deep as I've seen it at Georgia in a while. Dylan Bell, Dom Lovett, Colby Young, Robert Thomas. You've got 4 right there that you can depend on no matter what the down and distance is or where you are in the game. Then you have track star Arian Smith, track star Anthony Evans, 2 other transfers who are trying to make a name for themselves. They're set at wide receiver. They've got some really, really good players, and a lot of them. At running back, you've got a lot of 200+ pound guys. You got Trevor Etienne, who, Kirby compared to DeAndre Swift, I believe, after the G-Day game. He gives you speed, but he's also 200 pounds. Then you have 240-pound Roderick Robinson. You have 230-pound Branson Robinson when he's healthy. You've got Nate Frazier coming in. I'm lumping him in this group. He's the incoming freshman from California. Absolute stud, absolute dog. I think he's going to see the football this fall as a freshman, even with all those guys in front of him. So tight end, got a good group there. Oscar Delp, the Stanford transfer, Ben Yurosek, Lawson Lucky, and then the freshman behind them. So overall, there's not a lot of weaknesses on this offense. Are they as talented, and do they have as many big names as the other 2 offense, LSU and Bama in 1920? No. I mean, you just don't. Could they score 48 points per game? Probably not. Could they score 40? Yeah. Could they score 42 points a game, which would be a school record, I believe, if my numbers are correct? I think so. I think this team could average 42 points a game, whether Mike Bobo is calling the plays or not. And I think he is going to call this season with a chip on his shoulder. He wants to win a national championship as the play caller more than anyone, more than any fan watching this video. But he has, with a bad quarterback. Hudson Mesa was a bad quarterback. That's okay to say. That's not mean. It's the truth. He was not good at all. And Mike Bobo, with that guy, it helped Georgia to score 41.3 points a game. With this offense, and again, last year they scored 40 points a game. So I expect them to do the same. And if they take a step forward, there could be in that 42, 43 points per game average. And if they do that on the road as much as they're going to be on the road against these teams with this schedule. I think you could talk about this being the best offense in program history, but they've got to win a national title, I think, for that, to be placed on this team as the best offense ever. You got to bring home the hardware. I think Georgia has a really good chance to do that. Thanks for watching this video. You can read more about this over on Dawg Post. You can sign up to our free newsletter. That link is down below. It's free to sign up. So do that right now. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you on the website.